Hi, I'm John Byrne with Poets and Quants. Welcome to the second annual MBA Summit. This is our third in 3 panels today. This is going to be a really interesting one. I'm glad that everyone showed up. We're going to talk about business and social impact, which may not be something that immediately springs to mind when you think about a graduate business education. But increasingly, more and more people are using the MBA to leverage careers with social impact. And we have some really good examples with us today. So to my immediate left, we have a singer, and we'll get into that a little bit later because I hear she's quite talented, even though I didn't have the chance to look her up on YouTube. Cynthia Shih, who is working at McKinsey.org in a really interesting area, global sustainable communities.
Yes.
And we'll hear more about that as well. And then we have another person who's about to graduate in, what, 10 days?
Yep, about a week.
In about a week. No one's counting.
One more paper.
Nathan Stevens, who is also going to McKinsey, but a different part of McKinsey. You're actually going to work out of the Dubai office, and you start in November.
Yep.
So congratulations.
Thank you.
That's got to be a great job. And then next to Nathan, we have Stephanie Thomas, who is an impact venture investor, which I don't know how many of you know about impact investing. It is a small but growing and highly interested cul-de-sac of the investment community. And we're going to hear a lot more about that from Stephanie. And then, although you may think that he is still an MBA student because he's always so youthful looking, he's in fact the real adult on this panel. Scott DeRue, the Dean of the Ross School of Business here at the University of Michigan. Welcome, everybody.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Okay, so Cynthia, let's start with you because you were the entertainer who came to business school as a non-traditional student. And you're doing social impact work at McKinsey.org. Did you think of the MBA as a path to having that kind of career?
Absolutely, and that's actually why I came to an MBA program to begin with. As you can imagine, being a touring musician is not a obvious straight shot to having a social impact on a global scale necessarily, except maybe through song. And so I really was thinking hard for myself, what is a place where I can really do that kind of complete career switch and really equip myself with the basic skills and knowledge that I would need to bring, to a social impact endeavor, whatever that might look like. And that brought me very quickly to, I need to understand business, I need to understand market-based solutions, I need to understand how the largest organizations in the world, how they make decisions, how they operate. And that's how I ended up with an MBA program.
You're a true poet. You're the classic definition of a poet. All right.
Not a quant, absolutely.
A poet with quant skills.
That's right. And Stephanie, how about you? Did you actually come to get your MBA knowing that you would end up as being an impact investor?
Not at all. But I did know intuitively that I cared about capital accessibility. I didn't know until I got to Ross that it would manifest itself into the venture capital space where I'd be working directly with high growth technology-based companies. But it all started, with my previous work before coming to Ross, where I was working on Wall Street. I was working with a lot of global companies who had large supply chains. A lot of the financing was dedicated to supporting even the smallest of businesses. And when I looked around in terms of what were the institutions, what were these systems that were supporting these mom and pop shops, these smaller businesses, and even some very innovative, high growth potential companies, there weren't a lot, adequate systems out there. And so that's what really got me thinking around how can I connect the dots between my banking skill set and my experience understanding funding landscapes with connecting to innovative communities, the innovative economy to drive more capital to smaller businesses and upstarts. So being at Ross really gave me the breathing room to really come out of the workforce, to really understand what motivates me at the core, and then to also start to retool my skill set so that I could apply it in the entrepreneurial ecosystem.
That's great. And now, Nathan, even though you're going into a more traditional consulting role at McKinsey, you came from a development background.
Yep.
You were the head of the social venture fund here. So clearly you have that DNA in you that makes you want to do good in the world.
Right. Hope I keep that.
So tell us about that.
When I came to school, I mean, I'd always thought I was going to get a degree in international relations. My thought, I'd worked in the State Department, I worked in development. My idea of a graduation degree was going to be an IR. But I got to the point in my career about 4 years ago where I said the problems I'm facing are much more managing organizations in difficult settings and selling kind of solutions in economic development to private agencies and actors. And those problems weren't going to be found, the solutions weren't going to be found in an IR degree. I thought they were much more aligned to an MBA. So I came back with the idea of actually doing impact investing. I did that for my summer internship. I took taking a bit of a left turn, but I don't think I'll stay too far away from it for too long.
Yeah. I mean, one thing about a consulting job is it kind of prepares you for anything, just like the MBA does, right?
Yep.
And on some level, a consulting job is like an additional graduate degree, I think.
That's
frankly.
absolutely what I would say.
Okay, there you go.
That's definitely how it's felt.
And Scott, you're seeing this interest in millennials, Gen Zs, in a much bigger way today than ever before, right?
Yeah, John, and that's what has me really excited is folks like Cynthia, Nathan, and Stephanie, the hunger they have for tackling the most challenging and pressing problems of our generation and likely the next generation, and finding market-based, business-oriented solutions so that we can gain scale to have the most impact. And it's folks like them who get me really excited, and us as a business school community, not just Ross, but across the globe, that training that next generation of business leaders who understand and appreciate the power of business and the impact that it can have in the world. And then our responsibility and opportunity to give them the tools that they can use to then go leverage business to have that positive impact.
This has come both ways, because I think there's a general acknowledgement now that the world's biggest challenges require market-based solutions and require some business know-how and business basics, where in the past that may not have been true. You had a lot of really good people who were cause-oriented, who may not have had the tools to do the job. And so there's a meeting halfway here, I think, between social activism and mission and business know-how and get it done kind of thing, right?
No, I think that's exactly right. I mean, it's without a financially sustainable model, right, which in some sense is what business is able to provide, we can't have the impact that we aspire to have. I often say without margin, there is no mission. And what's really exciting is the students who are coming into our universities are so hungry to have that impact. And we as universities, as business schools, have the opportunity to give them the tools that will then unlock that potential, which is really exciting.
So for some people, it would be contrarian to think that if they want to pursue a career with social impact, they should get an MBA. Clearly, none of you were in that category. How come?
Well, I guess for me, part of the reason why it made sense to me was I was part of a dual degree program. And so I enrolled in the Urb Institute, Global Sustainable Enterprise, here at University of Michigan, which is a program that involves the MBA at Michigan Ross as well as the School for Environment and Sustainability. So I basically spent my time going through, between the two schools, and we had a joke in the beginning that it was sort of like, spending time with the tree huggers one day and with the capitalist pigs the next, and kind of, developing a lot of, cognitive dissonance. But I actually found that to be less and less the case, especially by the time that I got there, that the business school had really kind of absorbed a lot of that influence from all of the other schools and a lot of the other kind of ways of thinking. So I felt that I actually met a lot of peers that were thinking about business from a public policy and social impact perspective, who are thinking about it from a wealth inequality and how to address those kinds of issues, how to tackle climate change and environmental issues. And so I was actually pleasantly surprised to find that the MBAs and the business school was actually thinking about these problems and grappling with them and thinking about how can we work together. Yeah. And it was really a rich experience that way.
Stephanie, some options for people are they pursue a policy degree, or social administration. Did you think of that before applying to business school or not?
Actually, no, I hadn't thought of that. But quite frankly, being at Ross, it opened me up to all the possibilities. I had a lot of classmates who were dual degrees. I thought it was very important, even though I didn't pursue the dual degree, to have those classmates sort of shape and inform my opinion and my lens about the world, and also how to bring impact together with business. I think today we're moving into systems that are more emergent, more complex, more uncertain, and I think with that you have to have business leaders that have multidisciplinary backgrounds that can allow them to leverage a lot of different experiences, knowledge around how the various sectors interplay with each other, how different economies work together, and also just being able to solve these very sort of global issues. And so being able to have a dynamic lens on the world and on problems, I think is going to be incredibly important. And I think business as a tool, finance as a tool, is going to be the important way to drive a lot of that change home.
The other thing is the diversity of the class, right? Which really enriches the experience. But you're not only going to be sitting next to investment bankers and consultants in your class. Talk a little bit about the people you've met and how it's helped shape you in your thinking.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the advantages of Ross, or Michigan in general, is how many great programs they have across the university.
Yeah.
I think we forget how many things they have to offer because there are so many. And so we'll have class, and there'll be the herb students, the tree huggers, as you say. We have public health. We have Ford public policy students, and I think those people joining the class, maybe as dual degrees, maybe just as within their own track, have added to the conversation and made it much richer. And I think it also challenges the business students to defend their stance, and also opens them up to other opinions and other ideas on what business should and could be or is right now. And that has been great for me personally. I think it's been exciting. It's an interesting way to learn. It's also better for me to keep my mind outside of what, just the business track that some of us might be on here.
And you have a lot of students who want to be part of the social venture fund.
Yes.
How many applicants and how many people can actually participate?
I might be revealing some confidential numbers. We had about 100 applicants, and we had about 20 spots. So, sorry if that was not supposed to be told. It's a very, very competitive application process. We get a wide range of students. We have BBAs, we have MBAs, we also have law students join us, which is an incredible advantage.
Which is why I wanted to ask that question, because out of the 20 people, what was the diversity like?
Sure, I mean, I think it was about 10 MBAs, 5 BBAs, and 5 law students. So we have a wide range, and I know the other student funds draw from other schools as well.
And all from different backgrounds.
Yes, that's right. Yes, very, very wide backgrounds. We have a lot of non-traditional students, nonprofit backgrounds, people that are going to consulting, banking. We're better off because of it, and it makes for a much richer conversation in the fund.
Yeah,
Yes.
what's a lot of fun is, so there's 19 schools and colleges at the university, and some of our signature experiences draw from north of 11, 12, 13 of those 19 schools, bringing them all together. So our Leadership Crisis Challenge, for example, which often has a social impact component to it. What's the impact of the choices you're making as a business on various stakeholders, including but not limited your shareholders? I think this year we had 11 of 19 schools represented in that crisis challenge.
Wow.
And it's wonderful for those non-business students to get exposure to a set of business tools and principles that help you make choices. And then for our business students to get exposure to what are the policy implications, what are the community implications, how do you make these really sometimes tough choices that are very values-based and principle-based, understanding and sensitive to the broader world that you're in. And it's been a great learning experience to bring those folks into our community. It's one of the metrics we actually track, both in the curriculum and outside of the curriculum, as to how many students are we bringing into the school from all the various places on campus.
Right. Now, profit and purpose have always been a part of business, but it seems today they're more intertwined than they've ever been before. You agree?
I do agree with that. I think we're living in an age, and it's accelerating, where profit and purpose are coming together. I think that was always true to varying extent. I mean, if you go back to the civil rights movement in the late 50s and 60s, companies like Johnson & Johnson and Xerox and others were on the leading edge of integration and social issues that were defining our time. And I think that is true here today in what we're seeing around, say, for example, sustainability. But what I get really excited about is if you think about profits, if you think about people, and you think about the planet, those 3 Ps that we often talk about, with advances in technology, with new innovative business models, we're seeing less choices between these 3 and more and integrative solutions where we can do what's right for people, we can do what's right for the planet, and in doing so, it's actually right for profit.
Yeah.
And that's what gets me really excited. I mean, if you look at renewable energy in the Midwest, just in Michigan alone, there are over 120,000 renewable energy jobs today,
Wow.
right? If you look at coal mining jobs in the United States, it's roughly 50,000 jobs. And so we're seeing huge growth in areas of the economy that are going to have a positive impact, but also provide wonderful employment and long-term sustainability that I get really excited about.
So Cynthia, you have this great job and this great title, Global Director of Sustainable Communities at McKinsey.org. I bet you Nathan wants that job.
It's a pretty dream job, I gotta say.
Succession planning happening right here.
Talk after.
How did you get it? And to me, that's like the perfect example of profit and purpose, because McKinsey Co. makes the profit, so Nathan's going to make money for you, and then you're going to spend it, right? Not so simple.
Well, to a certain extent, yes. So, McKinsey.org is an independent nonprofit, separate from McKinsey & Company, but founded by McKinsey & Company. And we do apply a lot of the, human resources and kind of knowledge base and expertise and way of thinking about problems. And so our mission is to tackle complex social challenges. And we do that by trying to look at things from a whole systems perspective, which
So
is
give us a good example of that, a project you're currently working on.
Yeah, so one of the programs we have now is called Rethinking Recycling. So we looked at a lot of different areas of where can we actually bring the McKinsey way of approaching problems and bring a distinctive new solution. And so in recycling, we realized that there are really innovative players all kind of along the recycling value chain, but no one had really kind of connected all the dots and tried to figure out how do you help these players work together to create greater value and greater impact through pulling more recyclables through the system. So we're working with everyone from community players to recycling operators to companies like major consumer brands that really have made huge commitments to increasing the amount of recycling coming through the system, but they are now trying to figure out how to translate that into impact on the ground.
Right.
And so we're connecting those dots together, which is a great kind of vantage point from which to be tackling these issues.
Absolutely. And Stephanie at Impact America Fund, how do you bring together profit and purpose?
Yeah, I mean, we really look at it as, what is the sort of inherent driver of impact within the business models that we look to invest in? So those, drivers have to be tied to the overall business performance. So as a company is able to scale, that impact scales with it. So some of it is just, thinking of who are all the stakeholders, around the table, who are the stakeholders impacted, within a community that a business sits in, or in a community that a business is going to impact in some way, and how is that company taking into account the asset or the value that is inherently there, within those stakeholders to not only drive the company to scale, but also make it, uniquely beneficial to, those individuals or stakeholders, as part of that overall community. So what does that look like? It looks like, having a company that we've invested in our portfolio that is essentially creating a lending platform for Hispanic small business owners, understanding that these owners are driving economic benefit to their local communities. They're creating jobs. They're creating, access to products and services, but they don't have access to capital. And so how do we fund companies that will allow these small businesses and smaller enterprises to get access to funding that will allow them to further drive economic opportunity within their respective areas or respective regions? So that's how we look at it. Is what the company building inherently focused on creating more opportunity for more people who've otherwise been overlooked or marginalized outside of traditional banking and funding systems.
Right. And there's a lot of that going on in the world, isn't there?
There is, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. We're actually creating, it'll launch this fall, what we're calling our Impact Studio. And it'll bring together students, faculty from across campus. And the reason we're creating it is exactly this, that there's so much of this going on, so much opportunity to have an impact through business. And we want to bring faculty and students together and say, you pick the challenge that you want to work on. And then let's put the right people in the room and develop market-based business solutions so that they can scale, to your example. And marry that with the education so that students who graduate leave with the business tools, but also an understanding of what business can do, like Stephanie is describing, to scale and have that impact, whether it's a community that's been marginalized and hasn't had access to financial solutions in the same way that other communities have had, or smart cities and the sustainability challenges that we face, whatever the issue might be. We have an opportunity at this moment in history to come together with all of this diverse talent and really make an impact. And you all are walking testaments to the power of business and what can happen.
And Scott, that almost sounds like an extension of your experiential learning opportunities, right? Because if you bring people in this impact studio and they're going to work on a challenge together, that's the essence of experiential learning. Right?
That's exactly right. I mean, we're piloting it right now, and the pilot project is based on the Flint water crisis. And we used some faculty and students that got together. Eric Schwartz, who just was named one of your 40 under 40 today. So thank you.
In fact, yes.
And he and some students got together and built an algorithm that allows us to identify which houses are most likely to have lead pipes. And now cities like Flint are able to use these algorithms to prioritize their investments in infrastructure. The question now is, we've got great intellectual property there. How do we scale it? How do we actually take it to market? Those are fundamental business questions. And through this Impact Studio, faculty and students working together, we can create these action-based experiential learning opportunities that not only accelerate students' development as business leaders, but actually elevate the impact that business, and in our case, the University of Michigan, is having in our communities.
Right.
That's really exciting.
And if I can expand on that a little bit, I also think the experience itself, allows for a broader or wider conversation around what are the right problem sets to tackle, right? And I think the issue has been that you haven't had as a diverse, group of folks who are talking about the issues that they want to solve for. Although we have the technology, we have the know-how, we have the business acumen around it, we have the intellectual property. But now let's crowdsource, let's really bring into the mainstream conversations and discussions around big complex issues that before just were not being addressed, identified, even thought about or analyzed from a business context, from a technology context, from an innovation context. So that's what impact really is about. Yeah. How do you broaden the conversation and diversify the problem sets that are really worth tackling?
I mean, another big trend that makes this necessary, frankly, is the limits of big government to help. Whether it's politics that gets in the way, whether it's budgets that gets in the way, governments have been unable to deal with many of these big challenges. And if people and companies and organizations don't do it, it's not going to get done.
Then who?
Yeah, that's right. So Stephanie, you had a really formidable experience during your MBA here when you actually went on the road with an organization that was called MBAs Across America, and you gave free consulting help to small businesses, right?
That is right.
So tell us about that experience, because now Ross has Open Road, which does a similar thing every single summer. But tell us about your experience and how it helped shape who you are.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to, taking the time, within an MBA program to really figure out what motivates you, and then being willing to do experiments, take risk, get exposed to a lot of different opportunities and ways to really be out of the box, so to speak, in order to shape a career that you want and that you love. And I think for me, that summer between first and second year allowed me to do that. Essentially, with my network, people knew that I was looking for pretty interesting, things to attach myself to, and especially in the entrepreneurial space. And so we heard about some, crazy Harvard kids that were, including Casey Gerald, one of the original founders, launched MBAs across America. We were the first class to do it. So, myself and a few of other rosters got a team of 4 together. We hopped into 2 Chevy Volts at the time, and thank you, GM, for that. And,
Indeed.
And we did a 6,000-mile road trip, and it was pretty incredible. And I think for us, we really set out to make an impact, right, and to really support these entrepreneurs, but they really had an impact on us. And for me, it was really transformational in terms of how do you, engage with, organizations that have, been in community or been in, an industry, they know it really well, but they may just need a little bit of support, et cetera, from a, business lens or business perspective to get to that next level and to grow. And so it really humbled me in a lot of ways, but it also just offered me probably one of the most, sort of real world practical experiences I could ever imagine having through an MBA program. So
Yeah.
it was awesome.
Yeah.
And maybe to build on that a bit, I think some of the most powerful experiences I've had have been created by fellow students. And so when I was at Michigan Ross, there was a group of students that started a whole conference around really making people aware of what was happening in Detroit, which were some really exciting trends that tend to get lost in more like national news headlines. So these students who were really passionate about it came together and created the first conference of its kind and launched a whole bunch of impact projects for organizations in Detroit. And I'm not from Michigan. I came from California, lived in New York, didn't know anything about it. And then by my second year, I was co-leading this group that had now become a whole student organization with a whole impact project program and a leadership challenge and all the rest of it. And it was all started from students who felt like something should happen here. We need to put something together. And I think it's the energy of a business school that is situated in a university with all that energy from other schools and other disciplines that really made that possible.
And in fact, for many years during orientation for MBAs, there has been a leadership challenge, and it's always been directly connected to some sort of community need, right?
Yeah, as far back as I can trace history, every year when our MBAs come on campus as part of the orientation, there's all the standard things that you would do as part of an orientation, but it's usually a 3 to 4 day challenge, if you will, where our students are working in teams to take on some big challenge that we may have. And it's usually social in nature, tied to a community, often Detroit. And it's a great immersion into not only our community and builds the social relationships among students that you would want as part of a socialization and onboarding process, but it connects our students to the potential and the promise of business to have an impact.
Yep.
In really fundamental ways, even if they don't recognize it at that point. In time. You're planting a seed that over time will be watered and will grow. And that's what's really exciting. And so we've always had, as part of our imprinting process here, something connected to the impact of business in society.
I know this is one of the passion projects of my friend Noel Tishy here.
That's right.
Yeah, who led that. Yeah.
And what's been really exciting, as Cynthia mentioned, is to see it move from school creating experiences for our students to a partnership between the school, our faculty, and our students. And sometimes it's the school creating it, many times it's the students who are creating it, and then we're forming these partnerships that enable us to scale the impact that we have, even to a greater degree.
Right, exactly. So Nathan, I want to get back to your social venture fund, how that works and how that may have shaped your idea of what purpose you're going to pursue in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Social Venture Fund was probably the #1 reason why I came back to Ross, other than I'm from here. But
Well, wait a minute. Your dad graduated from Michigan.
Dad and sister, yes.
And sister.
Yes.
So it's in the family DNA.
It's in the blood, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I was fated to come back. But I mean, other than that reason, Social Venture Fund was an awesome institution that we have. It's entirely student run, so it's a student run fund. We actually have another alumni on the panel here as well. And it was an integral part of both learning, about impact investing, which is what I wanted to focus on, but also about management. I mean, we have 40 really diverse members of this fund. We have real capital, we work with entrepreneurs, and we're doing it within the university. So the university has done a huge amount of effort to set that up. I mean, it's not the easiest entity to run, to have students giving out cash to these entrepreneurs, but also, letting us kind of experiment with that. It's innovative, it's experimental. I think everything we've done, not everything, some things we've done haven't worked, but that's part of learning. And being in the space at Ross for these 2 years, some people 3 years, to try that out has been hugely influential. And I would say it's probably by far the most impactful thing I've done here, and also the most learning I've done has been through the fund itself.
Give us a few examples of what you invested in.
Sure. One of my favorite investments we did was, it was called Court Innovations. Basically, they would digitize the judicial process and put a lot of it online. So the idea being that for many low-income or less mobile individuals, the court system and the process by which you have to go through legal infractions can be very punitive. There's costs involved, there's a lot of transportation issues, many things that put them into a hole that they don't really need to be there for. So this company works with court systems throughout Michigan, and they've actually expanded quite regionally, to put that online, tell them when they need to be there, what they need to do, and streamline the process. We've seen from many demographics, so it's not just the demographic we thought we would be reaching, but across the board, people have really taken to it. And court systems themselves, they've seen better people not missing fines, not missing times to show up, and also a quicker processing time.
And Nathan, I thought you were going to mention crickets.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tell
Tell people who are not in the know about the crickets.
Sure, cricket protein. So I think
I'm excited about this.
we got experts. So we invested in a company that works in alternative proteins, specifically in cricket protein. We know that the agricultural system, the process of creating our mostly animal-based diet is pretty impactful on the environment in a negative way, and crickets are a way to really reduce the resource load and yet deliver more protein per pound than many of the other animals we eat now. So they started with chips, which are actually delicious. I've had them many times.
Like potato chips?
Potato chips. You
Cricket
wouldn't know.
chips?
You trick people, they have them, they're like, wait, I was eating crickets? So. Exactly. You can go to the stores. We'd appreciate it. And now they're moving into actual protein powder. So we've seen a lot of interest in the athletic community around a really diverse protein blend that they can provide through crickets, all while having a really reduced or minimalized environmental impact.
Wow, that's cool.
You know what's really neat about what they're doing with the Social Impact Venture Fund is a great testament to this. It was the first social venture fund in the country. So it started in 2009. And what's been really exciting is to see that transcend the University of Michigan and the Ross School of Business and find its way into other business schools. Because we get the students who come here, and we get the privilege of educating them and working with them and being partners with them for life. But from a scale perspective, from an impact perspective, in business education, this only works if we scale what we're doing across the country, across the globe. And to see our social venture fund become a model that is beginning to be replicated at other schools is really exciting.
In fact, you had schools seek your advice on how to set one up, right?
Yes, yeah, I became a popular person for the year. We've had, I would say, 10 to 15 schools ask us how we've done it, how we set it up, how we manage it, and the realities of having a student-run fund within a university, which is its own unique body. So we've been as helpful as we could be in helping them set it up, and I've seen more and more schools year after year come back and have these funds that they're spending real capital. I think it's an awesome legacy that we have.
And it's part of the curriculum.
Yes.
Right? I mean,
yes.
It's not something that students are just doing on the side. It's a core part of the curriculum, and faculty are engaged, and so the education that is the underpinning to this. That's where universities and business schools have to get it right, because otherwise it just becomes something that's on the side that happens over there. You want it to be part of the curriculum as a fundamental experience that students are having.
Yeah.
I would definitely echo that, because I think a lot of the people who may be tuning into this may be asking themselves, like, if I don't get an MBA, like, what are my other options, right? Like, could I just jump straight into a social impact venture or something else I'm interested in? And I feel like what so many of us got out of this experience was the combination of both, a safer setting in which to do something like a social venture fund, but also to marry that with academic reflection and teaching and support, so that unlike situations you may have in the real world, you can experiment with something, have it go awry or go really well, and then actually be able to kind of come together with faculty or with people experienced in this field and reflect on, like, what did we learn from that?
right.
What does that tell us?
That's right.
Yeah, and that's a perfect segue into the next question. Okay, it's easy when you sit in the class and you're doing a case study and you're talking about the ethical implications of a decision that a company has to make. But then when you're in the real world, how does that play out? How does ethical leadership play out? How do you bring your values to work? And is it hard? Is it a challenge when you're in a profit-making environment?
I would say that it has a lot to do with both, finding an organization that has strong values to work for, as well as then making sure you are a leader within that organization, living those values. And at McKinsey and Company, they have this wonderful value of obligation to dissent. Not only should you feel comfortable to, raise your hand and say something's not right here, but you actually have an obligation to, is how it's stated. And so at McKinsey.org, we have certainly adapted that as well, and feel like it's, my responsibility as one of the leaders of that team to create a really nurturing environment where people get to have those hard conversations. And we have had a few of them of what is the right thing to do in the face of, regulation or of players doing things that are, unsavory that we somehow have, contact with. How do we actually navigate those situations? And having a diversity of opinions that are all really kind of grounded in an ethical perspective has been really important for that.
And Scott, in the real world, competition is intense. There's a lot of pressure on people to perform, and some people don't respond well to it.
No, I think that's right. And I mean, we can all find examples in history and the media of business or business leaders engaging in actions that we would not be proud of, right? At the same time, I believe that the overwhelming majority of businesses and business leaders are giving voice to their values and are leading in ways that we would be proud of and making choices that are serving a whole diverse array of stakeholders. And I think what we all can do is give greater visibility to those examples and those illustrations of what we might refer to as ethical leadership, or I would just refer to as leadership.
Right.
And as a school, we want to unpack the cases that we're proud of. We want to unpack the cases that we're not proud of, and normalize this conversation. I think that's one of the most important things we can do, whether an educational institution, a profit-oriented business, or just a business, government. I mean, whether you're a for-profit entity or not. I mean, there are many for-profit entities that are not very good at making profit. And there are nonprofits who are pretty good at making profit. And so I think what we can do across all forms of organization is normalizing this conversation of values, ethics, and what our opportunity and our responsibility is to make an impact in the world.
Great. We have some really good questions here from our live stream audience.
Oh, excellent.
So let's go with the first one, okay? What advice would you give someone who wants to make a switch from the nonprofit world to corporate or consulting, but still wants to make an impact? Stephanie?
I think it goes, so I did, I guess the reverse, where I came out of corporate
Yeah.
to make an impact.
You were at Citibank, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I would say, start with your why. Like, really dig deep to understand, why are you questioning yourself around your career? What is motivating you around impact? And I think in the impact space, I put the quotation marks because you really have to define it for yourself and make it very individualized for yourself, because if you don't, you can definitely be led astray, and you can be working in impact and hating your job and not feeling like you're delivering on your purpose. So I think starting with the why is incredibly important, and I think from there, remain open to a lot of possibilities. For me, I knew my why around capital accessibility. My father was a serial entrepreneur, So growing up, I saw him struggle, getting access to capital to build a business. So I connected with that personally. Didn't think I'd be in venture capital, but I was open to it. Coming to Ross, really digging into the social venture fund, digging in with Zell Laurie Institute, and really figuring out, what were the tools that I could use to have, my purpose and the things that motivated me play out.
Right. I mean, that's a good question for you as well, right?
Yes, I guess sometimes being an independent musician can be like a nonprofit, right? You think you're doing a lot of good. The profit margins are not that high. I would certainly say that going into consulting, but kind of, it seems like maybe implied in that question is like, how do you keep your soul, right? And like, while you're going into some of these very, maybe business, like traditional business-oriented fields.
Yeah, how do you stay a tree hugger when you're a capitalist?
Right. Well, I would say that certainly knowing what you want to get out of each experience, you could even do it in 6-month increments or whatever kind of increments make sense for you. For me, that was really important as I was going through kind of the basic training of consulting, which was a very different world for me, and I definitely felt like a fish out of water a lot of the time. But I kept feeling like, what is the thing that I really want to learn from this chapter? And sometimes it was something as simple as, I want to know how to build a really robust business case for something. I want to know how to analyze, the growth opportunity of an organization, for profit or not. And then later it became, I really want to learn how to manage people and to be an inspiring leader and to really, help, coach people to the next level of, their performance. And so with each step of the way, I had specific goals of what I wanted to get out of it, and also a sense of how would I then transfer that to an impact situation. Because sometimes it was definitely that I was not certain, the project that I was on was not necessarily impact oriented, but there were certain skills that I was building with the ultimate goal of getting there.
Okay, Nathan, I think this is a good question for you, from our audience. Many MBA programs these days are talking about social impact. How can candidates tell when a program has a true commitment to impact?
Sure, that's a great question.
All right.
And I think in my recruiting process, I went through that. You try to pull back the layers and see what's really going on there. One is understanding and speaking with the students themselves. So, you need to make that effort to reach out to students that are in the program and say, hey, has this matched up to your expectations? Are you seeing the programs that they state are there? Are they really there? That's the social venture fund. A lot of people say they have a fund and they don't really have a fund. And so that was a big deal to me. I think the other thing is being clear about what you want in impact. That's a huge space. We talk about it across the spectrum. And I came in with a very narrow area of impact. And I recognize now that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. So if you take a little time and define kind of what you're looking for in the school and what impact you want to have and where you think that will actually manifest itself, you can be a little more targeted with your questions. And I can say that for me, I knew where I was coming in. For others, there's a huge range here. But take some time before you come in, know those questions and know exactly where you want to go with it, and that'll help you with your search.
Yeah. Again, this goes back to the admissions director panel. Talk to students, talk to alumni, visit the school, sit in the cafeteria, arrange an appointment with the head of the social venture fund, someone who went to MBAs across America, someone who was a dual degree person whose heart was in 2 different places, and you get a lot of information. This is a question certainly for the dean.
Okay.
So Scott, how do you educate leaders to incorporate sustainability into their thinking?
I think consistent with our principles around action-based learning and very experiential is, my view is if you go to any top business school, you're going to get the basic fundamentals. What we do that I think is pretty unique is put students in situations where they have to wrestle with these challenges, say sustainability, and the ambiguity and the uncertainty that is involved. Like, how do you create a sustainable solution for city building and placemaking? How do you create sustainable solutions for energy consumption? These are really wicked problems that don't have straightforward solutions. I think the best thing we can do as an educational institution, as a business school, and this is true for Michigan Ross, I think it's true for all business schools, is put our students and our faculty in those situations together in ways that create an opportunity to wrestle with these challenges, use the business fundamentals to have an impact. And in doing that, we're imprinting not only a set of values, but also a perspective on the power and the promise of business and what it can do. And then when they go off into the world and work for McKinsey or an impact investing fund or an investment bank or whatever domain it is. To Nathan's point, the definition of impact actually expands. And we find this for almost every student who walks through our doors, is they start to see with a different perspective a broader view of the impact that one can have in the world, no matter what your career path might hold. And I believe at my core that we achieve that by putting our students and our faculty in these situations where they're working together with wonderful organizations all around the world on these big, wicked challenges, in this case, sustainability, and forcing them to, through their education, come up with solutions that may be half-baked, and that's okay. We're learning, we're growing, and we're expanding our perspective on how we can have an impact through our careers.
That's great. Would you know our time is up?
It's amazing. Time flies when you're having fun.
But I'll say, you know, the rubber hits the road when you join a program and you immediately have a 3 or 4 day leadership challenge that involves some sort of social impact. The rubber hits the road when you have a fund with real money that you're investing in mission-driven organizations. It hits the road when you go on the road, open road at Ross, and you take your summer and you help small businesses achieve their dreams. And the rubber hits the road when a dean puts an investment in something called an impact studio and makes it an important part of the curriculum as an elective and an experiential opportunity to get your arms around one of these big, wicked challenges that we're facing today. So thank you all for participating. It was a great session, I think, and a real good window on, you know, part of MBA program is that maybe a lot of people don't see. And today, where there is a lot of mistrust in business, and many people believe that capitalism is in crisis, it's a breath of fresh air to hear young people and older people who look young speak the wisdom of the ages. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants at the second annual MBA Summit at the Ross School of Business, the University of Michigan. Thank you for joining us.